His father passed away based on a gang war.
His older brother was murdered, so he himself experienced death at an early age.
That's Thursday.
Not for bragging, but for, celebrating yourself, celebrating your wealth, celebrating the success that you've made in the industry, which I do believe made him an instant target at that particular time.
This is the final moment of the 30-year-old Rakeem Hashim Allen, known better as PNB Rock, a popular rapper who was shot dead after his girlfriend went to Instagram and revealed their location. Just minutes after 1 p.m. on September 12, 2022, frantic 911 calls led police to Roscoe's House of Chicken and Waffles at 106 West Manchester Avenue in Los Angeles, California. And when officers entered the restaurant, they found Rakeem slumped in his seat, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. Just hours before, he had been moving through the city like normal, attending meetings, spending time with his fiancée, wearing the same diamond chains and watches that had become part of his image. Nothing suggested that lunch would turn into an ambush. As detectives pieced together surveillance footage, they identified a masked teenage gunman, but behind him stood someone older, someone who had helped set everything in motion. And what investigators uncovered next would show that this was not a random act of violence. It was a murder planned within minutes. But to understand how a casual lunch stop turned into a fatal robbery that shocked the music world, we have to go back to the very beginning. This is the life and death of PNB Rock.
Every time you take a man off the streets and clean him up, everybody want him. We trying to mind our business, grow our little family, and get rich. We trying to live, baby. Ain't nothing gonna break us up. I'm trying to grow my edges. And y'all interfere with my relationship. My man ain't going nowhere. Where you going, baby?
Nowhere! So y'all need to stop hating and mind our business because I take care of this lady with my disability check.
Hey, say it again, baby.
With my disability check.
So stop being miserable and mind your own business because I got me a man. I am very lucky. He's strong. Who's the?
I'm the man.
You heard him. And we be ready on the 1st every month, sitting at the bank. Say them again, they need to stop doing what, baby?
Hating.
You heard my man.
Rakeem Hashim Allen, known to the world as PNB Rock, was born on December 9, 1991 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He grew up in the Germantown section of the city, an area that shaped both his identity and his music. His stage name came directly from his neighborhood. PNB stood for Pastorius and Bainton, two streets close to where he was raised, and Rock came from his first name, Rakeem. From the beginning, his name carried the weight of where he came from. But his childhood was not easy. Rakeem lost his father when he was very young after his father was killed in a violent incident. Years later, his older brother was also murdered. Those losses were not distant tragedies, they were part of his daily reality growing up. Violence was not something he read about in the news, it was something he experienced inside his own family. And that pain would later show up in his music. However, even in that environment, his story did not end there. As a teenager, Rakeem struggled. He got involved in street life and eventually spent time in a juvenile detention facility. That time could have defined him in one way, but instead it shifted his direction. While locked up, he began writing music seriously. He started turning his thoughts, grief, and frustration into lyrics, and that decision would change the course of his life. But getting out did not mean instant success. When he was released, Rakeem did not step into fame. He had to build everything from the ground up. He recorded songs independently. He handed out CDs. He sold his music out of the trunk of his car. He promoted himself through social media. He didn't have a major label behind him at first. What he had was persistence. And slowly, people began to listen. Around 2014 and 2015, Rakeem started gaining attention in Philadelphia. His mixtape, R&B 3, caught momentum. His sound stood out because he blended rap with melody. He could sing hooks and still deliver street-focused verses. That mix made him different. He wasn't just another rapper, He was an artist who could cross between rap and R&B naturally. But then a single track changed everything. In 2016, he released Selfish. The song gained national traction, gaining over 68 million views on YouTube and entered the Billboard Hot 100. That moment pushed him beyond Philadelphia. His voice was now on mainstream radio. Soon after, he signed with Atlantic Records, and once that deal was in place, his career moved to another level. And it didn't stop there. He was selected for XXL's freshman class in 2017, which is considered a major milestone for emerging hip-hop artists. That recognition placed him among the most promising rappers of his generation. He was no longer an underground name, he was part of the national conversation in hip-hop. But what truly expanded his reach were his collaborations. Rakim worked with major artists, including Ed Sheeran and Chance the Rapper in a song called Cross Me. He appeared on tracks that crossed into pop audiences. He toured nationally, he performed at festivals. His debut album, Catch These Vibes, debuted in the top 20 on the Billboard 200 chart. He followed it with additional projects like Trap Star Turned Pop Star and Going Through the Motions. And with that success came visibility. PNB Rock was not at the level of the biggest global superstars, but he was firmly established in the mainstream music industry. He had millions of monthly listeners on streaming platforms. His songs generated millions of streams. He had a loyal fan base. He had industry respect. His name carried weight. And financially, that success showed. By the time of his death, estimates placed his net worth between $3 to $6 million. That wealth came from album sales, streaming revenue, touring, performances, and brand partnerships. He had moved far from selling music out of a car trunk. He had built a real career. But one part of his image became especially noticeable. Rakim was known for wearing expensive jewelry, diamond chains, custom pendants, multiple watches, rings. These were not costume pieces. Some of his jewelry was valued in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Wearing luxury jewelry was common for him. It was part of hip-hop culture and it was part of his personal style. He often shared photos showing his pieces. It wasn't new. It wasn't unusual for him. It was simply how he presented himself as a successful artist. However, that visibility would later become a serious risk. Despite the luxury and fame, those close to him described Rakim as deeply connected to his family. He was a father. He was engaged to Stephanie Sibun Huang, the mother of his daughter. Those who knew him personally said he loved being around his children. He valued fatherhood. He spoke openly about wanting to provide for his family in ways he didn't experience growing up. But success does not erase the past. Even as he built wealth and recognition, Rakim carried the scars of his upbringing. His music often reflected loss, survival, and the pressure of coming from violence. He didn't hide where he came from. He made it part of his story. And that story continued building. By 2022, he was 30 years old. He had been in the industry for years. He had multiple projects out. He had charted records. He had toured across the country. He had built a brand that connected with fans who saw him as authentic. On the afternoon of September 12, 2022, everything changed. That day, Rakim was in Los Angeles with his fiancée, Stephanie Sibun Huang. They were in the city for business meetings and personal plans, including an engagement celebration for another artist. Earlier in the day, they spent time together before deciding to stop for lunch. Shortly after noon, they drove to Roscoe's House of Chicken and Waffles at 106 West Manchester Avenue in Los Angeles, California.
They arrived around 12:20 p.m. and walked inside together. Rakim was wearing multiple pieces of jewelry, including diamond chains, watches, and rings costing almost $500,000. That was normal for him. He wore jewelry often. They were seated at a table inside the restaurant, not in a private room, just in the main dining area. And when the food was served, Stephanie posted a story on Instagram revealing their location. But while they were sitting there, something else was already in motion.
Yet another man who was inside the restaurant recognized Rakim. He had been near the entrance and saw him walk in. After noticing the jewelry, he stepped outside, and instead of leaving, he made contact with someone else. And within minutes, a robbery plan began forming, which didn't take long for it to be executed. Outside the restaurant, a vehicle arrived. Inside that vehicle was a teenage boy. He exited the car wearing a mask and walked directly towards the entrance. He didn't hesitate. He didn't wander. He moved with purpose. And then he walked inside. At around 1:16 p.m., the masked teenager approached Rakeem's table. He pointed a gun directly at him. There was no long conversation. There was no drawn-out argument. He demanded the jewelry immediately. Rakeem was seated. Stephanie was sitting beside him. Restaurant staff and customers were nearby. The gunman repeated the demand to give him everything. And then, in seconds, he began shooting. Multiple gunshots rang out inside the restaurant. Rakeem was hit several times in the chest and back while still seated at the table. Stephanie was right there as it happened. The shooter grabbed chains, watches, and rings off of Rakeem's body. He ordered Stephanie to remove her own watch. He threatened to shoot her if she didn't move fast enough, and so she did. The entire confrontation lasted only moments. Customers ducked, restaurant employees ran. The gunman turned and left the restaurant as quickly as he entered. Inside Roscoe's, Rakeem Allen had been shot multiple times during what started as a robbery over jewelry. He was rushed to the hospital, but he died due to the gravity of his injuries. He was just 30 years old. But the story didn't end inside that restaurant.
At about 1:15 p.m., Southeast Patrol officers responded to the 100 block of Manchester Avenue for a robbery that just occurred. When they arrived, they found a male suffering gunshot wounds, and that male was then transported to the hospital. What occurred was the victim, along with a female witness, were in this area eating at a restaurant when they were approached by at least one suspect who brandished a firearm and demanded property from the victim. The suspect then shot the victim multiple times and removed property, and then left the location in a getaway car. The getaway car fled in an unknown direction. We don't know where the vehicle went. Officers then were able to close down the scene until we could find out what the status of the victim is. I'm sorry to say that the victim has been pronounced deceased at 1:59 hours today. South Bureau Homicide is working this case, as are many other detectives.
Within hours of Rakeem's death, social media users began blaming Stephanie for revealing their location. Many believed the geotag had alerted the suspects and led them directly to the restaurant. Even big celebrities posted on Twitter about the incident. All the while, Stephanie was still unaware that her beloved Rakeem was already dead. Stephanie later told investigators she blamed herself. She said she never thought posting a picture of food would put anyone in danger. But as the investigation moved forward, prosecutors clarified that the robbery had already been set in motion by someone inside the restaurant who recognized Rakeem. The plan formed in person, not because of the Instagram post. Still, the damage from that online narrative was already done. And while the internet debated responsibility, law enforcement focused on the people they believed were directly involved. Within days of the shooting, investigators began identifying the people involved in the robbery.
The suspect then brandished a firearm and demanded his property. We don't have the audio as to what the exact verbal exchange was at that time.
Vehicles were traced, phone records were examined, the people connected to the scene began to come into focus, and soon, arrests followed. On September 27, 2022, police arrested 40-year-old Freddie Lee Trone, the father of the teenage gunman. He was taken into custody in Las Vegas, Nevada, after leaving California in the days following the shooting. Around the same time, Chantel Trone, Freddie's wife, was also arrested. The 17-year-old son who actually entered the restaurant and fired the shots had already been taken into custody in California. But there was another name tied to the case. Authorities also arrested Tremont Jones, the man who had been inside the restaurant before the shooting. He was the one who recognized Rakeem and alerted Freddie Trone. Prosecutors later described him as the person who set the robbery in motion, and that is when the formal charges were filed.
Freddie Trone was charged with murder and robbery. Even though he did not pull the trigger, prosecutors argued that he drove his son to the restaurant and helped plan the robbery. Under California law, someone involved in planning or helping commit a felony that results in death can be charged with murder. The teenage son was charged with murder and robbery as the direct shooter. Because he was 17 at the time, his case was handled in juvenile court. Tremont Jones was charged with robbery and conspiracy to commit robbery. Conspiracy means agreeing with others to commit a crime. Chantel Trone, Freddie's wife, was charged as an accessory after the fact. That means she was accused of helping after the crime happened. But before the case reached trial, some defendants made decisions about their pleas. Chantel Trone entered a no-contest plea to accessory after the fact. A no-contest plea means she did not admit guilt directly, but accepted conviction and sentencing. She later received probation and community service. Another woman involved, who helped Freddie leave town, pleaded guilty to accessory after the fact. She was also sentenced to probation. However, the main defendants chose to fight the charges. Freddie Trone and Tremont Jones went to trial. The trial began in Los Angeles County Superior Court. Prosecutors presented surveillance footage showing the timeline inside and outside of Roscoe's. They showed how Jones left the restaurant, contacted Freddie, and how Freddie arrived in a vehicle with his son. Video showed the masked teen entering the restaurant and fleeing afterward. Prosecutors also presented evidence that the getaway vehicle was later set on fire in an attempt to destroy evidence. The defense argued that Freddie did not intend for a murder to happen. They claimed he did not know his son would shoot anyone. They challenged whether the robbery was planned to result in death. But then, the jury had to decide. In August 2024, the jury returned its verdict. Freddie Lee Trone was found guilty of first-degree murder and robbery. First-degree murder in this case meant the killing happened during the commission of a robbery, which makes it murder under felony murder rules. The jury agreed that the robbery led directly to Rakeem's death. The Tremont Jones was found guilty of robbery and conspiracy to commit robbery. The jury determined he played a key role in setting the crime in motion. But there was still one case unresolved. The teenage gunman's case remained in juvenile court. A judge later ruled that he was not mentally competent to stand trial at that time, meaning he was not able to understand the legal process or assist in his own defense. Because of that ruling, his case was paused while he received treatment. However, sentencing for the adult defendants moved forward. Freddie Lee Trone was sentenced to 31 years to life in state prison. Tremont Jones was sentenced to 12 years in prison for his role in the robbery conspiracy, while the teenage son and the stepmother are still awaiting their trial. And with that, the main legal phase of the case reached its conclusion. The courtroom proceedings ended with those sentences in place. Justice, in the legal sense, had been handed down. Rakeem's death sparked immediate reaction across the music industry and beyond. Fellow artists, fans, and public figures spoke out about the violence that took his life. Many pointed to the risks that artists face when their location or lifestyle becomes public in real time. Conversations grew around social media safety, robbery targeting, and the pressure within hip-hop culture to display wealth. In Philadelphia, fans gathered to honor him, playing his music and sharing memories of how his story inspired them. For his family, especially his mother and children, the loss was deeply personal. For his community, it was another example of talent taken too soon. His death became part of a larger discussion about safety, fame, and how quickly success can turn into vulnerability. If this story shows anything, it is how fast one decision, one moment, or one plan can change lives forever. Support the families who are left behind. Be mindful about what you share online. If you're in the public eye, think carefully about safety. And if you see suspicious activity or information related to violent crimes, report it to local authorities. Staying aware and speaking up can prevent harm before it happens. Rakeem Hashim Allen built himself from struggle into success. He turned loss into music. He turned pain into purpose. At 30 years old, his life ended inside a restaurant during a robbery that lasted only minutes. But his story is larger than the way he died. He was a father, a son, an artist, and a man who rose from his neighborhood to national recognition. And that is how he will continue to be remembered. What do you think about it? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you found this story intriguing, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.